Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast, Episode 3.
Everyone wants happiness and success, and we know how to get you there. Come listen to the Leadership Society of Arizona as we teach a proven logic to help you simplify life, overcome challenges, and predict the future. You're listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. My name is Chuck Zalanis, and I'm joined by Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi. How are you doing, Dr. Jacob?
Doing good today, Chuck.
Great. So we're going to cover a topic that is extremely pertinent, I think, to a lot of our listeners. And the question for today is, how do you find your purpose in life?
That's a good question, Chuck. I actually get that from many students. So there's a couple of things that I always tell students that ask me this question. First, I ask them how old they are. If they're anywhere between the ages of 12 to 22, maybe 24 up to 24, I tell them, you don't need to know the purpose of your life. Chances are you haven't really been able to do very much. You don't have a lot of experiences. You're in college maybe. You're just starting to develop your life and get out into the world. And you're still developing. No one in their right mind is going to ask an inexperienced person who's still developing, what are you going to do for the rest of your entire life? It's impossible to know. So I always tell people, if you don't know, don't have to worry about it. If you do know, hey, then you wouldn't be asking me this question, so you're good as well.
Well, I mean, that answer is a little different than what we think for most academic institutions. You kind of have to pick what your major is, what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Yes, it's really funny nowadays. It seems that students are getting a lot of pressure from their parents, from their schools, that even from the age of junior high schools, 12 and 13, they're getting pressure to figure out what your career is going to be and what you want to do for the rest of your life. And the idea here is that the traditional education feels that when you're young, you have to start working at these things. Because what's going to make you successful is your preparation. But what I always tell people is, what's going to make you successful is not how much information you memorize, not how much you practice, but it's what you're good at. So let me give you an example. I'm going to ask you some questions here, Chuck.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Are you more likely to be successful in something you're naturally good at or something you have to work in?
Naturally good at.
Yes. And if you're naturally good at it, do you have to practice it more or less?
Less.
Do you have to try to work at it and figure out how to do it more or less?
Less.
If you're really good at something, are you going to have to try to search for opportunities more, or will opportunities come to you more for that type of thing?
They'll come to me.
Yes, because when you have value, things always come to you. And so what I always tell people is, although your teachers, your parents, they have good intent, they want you to be successful. If you try to do something that you're not good at, of course it's going to take a long time, and of course you're going to have to start from a young age. But the key is, if you're not good at it, you're not going to be as successful in it. So starting younger won't help you as much. But my view is, if you figure out who you are, you figure out what you enjoy, you can take longer figuring that out, but once you figure it out, you'll become incredibly successful. And so for me, children should focus more not on trying to figure out what they're going to do for the rest of their life. And as you get into college, it shouldn't be trying to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It should be trying to figure out, what do you enjoy? What comes easy to you? What are you really good at? And the more you figure out about yourself, As you grow up, you will naturally figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It will come to you. It'll be so easy. You don't even have to make a decision on it. It will just naturally happen.
Wow.
Does that sound like a good thing to you, Chuck, to just let things come to you?
It sounds a lot like Hakuna Matata, like the Lion King, like where you're just kind of going along and you're just enjoying life and not really worrying about anything.
It kind of is that way because it's so enjoyable. But
Right.
but it's not the same as Hakuna Matata.
Okay.
It's just not worrying about anything, right? You actually are doing something, but what you're doing is figuring out who you are, is getting out there and just finding out more about yourself. You don't have to worry about picking something you're going to do for the rest of your life, but you are getting out there and doing things. You are getting out there and trying things. You are getting out there and observing how you feel about different subjects in school, different things that happen in your life, things that you do.
Right. So it's not like a passive experience of life. Like you're just like taking whatever comes to you. More so, you're trying out different things, see what you like, see what you're good at, and you then when you find out what you like and what you're good at, you do more of that. You don't do as much of what you're not good at and what you don't like.
You got it. And amazingly, you're doing the same things that schools and teachers want you to do. You just don't have the stress and worry about picking something like when you're young and sticking
Mm.
to it all the way.
And that's a little hard if you're going into college and you've got all these different options available to you. You don't really have an opportunity to pick all of them. You kind of have to pick one.
And that is true. And so this is something that I think I can advise in. Meaning if you're trying to figure out what classes you should take or as you go into college, what major you should go into. I would go into whichever one you like. And if you don't know which one you like, then I always tell students, don't make a decision. Look at what your parents do. Look at what you know you're naturally good at and go into something that fits along those lines. Usually you're going to be very much like one of your parents. And so I would
Mm,
pick the parent you're closest to and most like and do whatever they did.
okay.
And if they didn't go to college or they didn't, do what you're doing, then ask them, what would you do?
Right.
And get their
Okay.
advice.
Yeah. Asking for a little help on that decision.
The thing about it is, regardless of what you decide to do, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to give you more information about yourself. And as you move on in life, it will naturally lead you to the place that you should be.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of times people get pretty stressed over what to decide, what to do, and it almost paralyzes them. And so the best choice is to make a choice. And then if you need to change your major, well, most people change their major anyways.
Yes, and what I tell students is it's not the choice that will lead you to your destination. It is you. It is when you do something, how you do it, what you do, who you meet. And that, as you're going through life, you'll naturally meet the people, do the things that you need to do. And so don't get too stressed off of making the choice. Just look at your options, pick the one you think is the best, and go with it.
Mm. Okay.
If you
And
look at the statistics, Chuck, you realize that the majority of people who go to college, they never get a job in the major that they graduated from. So just
mm,
because you pick a major or you go to a class doesn't mean you're going to be stuck with it all your life.
or I mean, you could benefit from it all your life too. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be stuck, but yeah,
Yes.
no, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people can think, "Oh, I'm an engineer. That's all I'll ever be. I don't I don't need to do anything else. Or, oh, I'm an art major, I don't have any talent in something else, then that sort of thought process could kind of stifle you. But you were talking just about up to 24 years old. What would you tell to someone who's over 24 years old?
If you're over 24 years old, dang, what have you been doing for 24 years? No, I'm just kidding with you. No, if you are over 24 years old, it's still okay. But what that tells me is that you've been spending too much time trying to make a decision. So at this point, I would say do two things. The first is go talk to someone who is really successful that you admire. Get a mentor and talk to them about it. That's the first thing. Because if you're over 24 and you're still trying to figure out what you want to do, then you do need a mentor. You need someone who can help you along this path. And the second is you just have to go and do something, anything. Just move. You know, if you're out of college, you're trying to find a job, go with whatever you want, right? Any opportunity available, do it. And as you do it, it will naturally tell you this is the right job or this is not the right job. And if it's not the right job, then just keep looking for more opportunities while you're working. And eventually the right opportunity will come up and it will lead you to where you need to go.
And this should be within reason, right? Like, if I say my opportunity is making $2 an hour someplace, it's not going to feed my family, then it's probably not the right opportunity for me.
It's true. What I say is you have to go by your constraints. Meaning, if you need to make a certain amount of money to survive, then don't be looking for jobs where you don't make that much money. Right? There's no way you can afford to accept that job. Two is you need to look at other constraints that you might have. Maybe you don't have a car, right? Or maybe you have to live by a certain family member because you have to take care of them, right? Everything is going to have to be within your limitation of what you're able to do and also what opportunities are actually available.
Right.
You can't be looking for an opportunity that no one's offering that opportunity to you. So I always tell people, look at what you have available and look at your constraints and pick the best option there. And so if you're over 24, chances are you probably need someone to help you out with that. And that's why you should always find a mentor first and then start to move along.
Right. Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Pretty easy, right?
I hope so. I hope our listeners can follow along. I hope they can take the courage to act on that advice and that counsel, find a mentor, and figure out something that they can do that's within their constraints, and make sure that they move along, and then their purpose in life will come along. They'll find what they're good at and what comes easy to them.
Yes. I always say, you can't keep a bear from honey. Meaning, whatever you naturally crave, whatever you naturally really want to do, nobody in the world can keep you from doing it and can keep you from getting your hands on it. So don't worry about the future. Don't worry about, you're not going to get where you want to go. You will. You just have to keep moving.
Can't keep a bear from honey. Okay. Well, that's all we have for today for our podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed. Thank you for listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. It would be great if you could take a moment to write us a review. For any questions, comments, or topics that you would like to have addressed on the show, email Dr. Jacob Kashwagi at jacob.k@leadaz.org. To learn more about the Leadership Society of Arizona, visit us at leadaz.org.